You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here on this breezy Friday morning. I am Frida Foster, and I am honored to serve as the chairperson for this Friday, December 8th, 2023 meeting of the Harlem CDC Board. The directors have received the relevant written materials in advance of today's meeting and are free to ask questions at any time. Consistent with the policy of our parent corporation, Empire State Development, we welcome public comment on the items on the agenda. After each item is presented and any comments are received from the directors, we will allow members of the public to provide comments. All comments should be limited to 2 minutes and should only address the item that is under consideration. For the record, the public was given the opportunity to comment on today's agenda items by submitting their written comments by 4:30 p.m. yesterday to hcdcboard@esd.ny.gov. No comments were received from the public. Before we begin with the substantive portion of the meeting, please note that the first item on today's agenda is a presentation by the Apollo, and it is for informational purposes only that do not require a vote. Before we get started with that, however, I would like to go around the table to introduce the board members and then to introduce our guests that are here today. And I will start with Mr. Director.
Curtis Archer, President, Harlem Community Development Corporation. Welcome.
Ernestine Bell Temple, representing Assemblyman Al Taylor.
Good morning, Shauna Marks, representing Adriano Espaillat. I serve as the Director for Government and Community Affairs.
Good morning, Keisha Sutton James. I serve as Deputy Manhattan Borough President here, representing President Mark Levine.
Lesbia Giddy, I'm here for America NYS. We represent Assembly Member Eddie Gibbs from the 68th District.
Good morning, everybody. Jaleesa Quigley, representing Councilmember Shauna Brea.
Hello, everyone. My name is Terrence Sean. I'm with the Real Estate Department at ESD. Good morning, everyone. Mackie Bentley, representing Assemblymember Daniel O'Donnell.
Sorry, can you read? Teresa Hassler, representing Senator Cordell Clear as her District Director and Chief Counsel.
Denise Brown, representing Ruth Ann Viniski from THC, New York State Homes and Community.
Carlene Turner Beverly, Senior Counsel for Empire State Development and proud to be designated counsel for HCDC.
Earl Thompson, Pension Director at HCDC.
Iomide Carbon, Community Relations Manager, the Apollo Theater.
Camila Forbes, Executive Producer, Apollo Theater.
William Bryant Miles, a Senior Consultant at CGEM Consulting, consulting to the Apollo Theater.
Hi, everybody. Fatima Jones, Chief Marketing Officer at the Apollo.
Good morning, Candace Jackson with CGM Consulting.
Aldous Scrofani, Chief Operating Officer at the Apollo, and thank you for having us.
Michelle Ebanks, President and CEO of the Apollo.
Wilmer.
No, Wilmer Wrong, Director of Community Relations at ESD. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, so now we will just roll right into, yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi.
Hello.
This is Yolanda Ford representing Superintendent Adrian Harris. I'm on the phone.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Is anybody else on the phone?
Yes, Santina Tassone, ESD, Senior Accounting Director, and I oversee ESD from ESDC from an accounting standpoint.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Anna Peisier from the Community Relations Team at ESD.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, hearing none. Yes, ma'am. Our counsel, Carlene Turner Beverly.
Thank you very much, Chair Foster. I do have just a quick disclaimer to note for the room regarding the procedural posture in which we're proceeding at the moment. As a procedural matter, the HCDC board cannot conduct official business absent a quorum. At the present time, we do not have a quorum of directors present. Notwithstanding, as Chair Foster noted, the first item on the agenda is an informational presentation presented for informational purposes only. This item is not subject to deliberations or voting. Accordingly, the presentation of this informational item does not constitute engagement in official business within the meaning of the Open Public Meetings Law. The directors, on recognition by the chair, are certainly permitted to ask questions pertaining to the particular information presented during the presentation. Please bear in mind, however, that this is presented separate and apart from deliberations regarding the voting item on the agenda. Deliberations and voting for the voting item on the agenda will require a quorum for the public, for the Open Public Meetings.
Thank you very much, Council. Thank you. Now, we will turn it over to the Apollo Theater for the presentation that was aforementioned. Yes.
Hello, thank you. Thank you, Chair, members of the board. It is an honor to be here today. Thank you for your leadership and service to the community. I have been in this role now for 5 months. And thank you. So it's a privilege, to have been selected by the board of the Apollo to follow the esteemed leadership of Janelle Prokop for 2 decades. And it is also a privilege to be here at the storied Apollo and understanding what it's meant, not only to the Harlem community, but to New York City and to the world. And, it was able to achieve, this institution was able to achieve this global impact and recognition because it's here in Harlem and serve the community. And so it's a point of unaccountable pride for me to be here, and I've done nothing to contribute to now the Victoria Theater and its opening and the Apollo's role. This has been the work of the leadership of Janelle and this team, and I'm very proud to be here with them today as they present the update on the Victoria Theater itself and how it will be in service to cultural institutions and to the community at large here in Harlem that we serve. And so with that, I will turn it over to Camila Ford, our executive producer.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. And thank you, Michelle. Again, like she said, it's always an honor to serve at the Apollo because we know that as a cultural arts center, our mission is to serve community. Obviously, we've been around for 90 years. Many of you already know that. Many of you were part of that legacy, intimately part of that legacy. That has allowed Apollo to not only, be emblematic of the Harlem community and beyond. We formally became a nonprofit in 1991. Really, the last 20 years have really been focused on programmatically and operationally and mission-driven and artistic programming towards that mission. As you can see on the screen here, if we could back that up. There we go. There we go. There it is. Our mission. And as we're drafting that through, right, is this idea of, yes, a premier performing arts center, the elevation of Black artists and creativity. But as we all know, the role that is central to cultural arts centers is not solely to be a home for entertainment. That's only probably 10% of our work. But through our center, we are a home that asserts identity, cultural stewardship, the health and contribute to the health and well-being of a community, and also an economic driver for local community. So with that being said, we had to embrace more deeply our mission-based approach in order to be a catalyst for artistic evolution, audience participation, and continued learning and engagement with an unrelenting drive to advance culture in Harlem, our nation, and beyond. We wanted to be certain that Harlem was a part of that language, as you can see on our screen. This meant that we had to create programming and initiatives beyond Amateur Night and Showtime at the Apollo that we were so well known for. Our programming had to speak to the impulses and needs of the communities around us. Some of those programs are our Music Cafe on our soundstage, 50-seat Black Box Theater, of which we make home to organizations and artists, local artists like the Soapbox Presents, or the Bronx's own Samara Joy. She was part of our Harlem Music Cafe, and next week we'll have 2 sold-out shows at our main stage. This was well before her Grammys, that Apollo was home to her. Our film program, which was a partnership with Harlem-based Image Nation, which showcased the best and brightest of Black independent film. We also host a series of town hall programs, and these programs convened community to discuss and interrogate and be heard around issues that were pertinent to them. One of the community programs that are coming up is our upcoming MLK Young Changemakers event. The Young Changemakers Beloved Community, taking the notion of MLK community and expanding that beyond. This is produced by our young people that are part of our Apollo education program, part of our producers club. You'll hear a bit more about our program, our ongoing programs later on in this presentation. But one that we also wanted to note is our education program. Over the last 17 years, we've made quite a deep investment in education and serving young people, families, and teachers. The Apollo, we engage over 15,000 students annually, teachers and families, across the 5 boroughs with various programs at the Historic Theater and also in New York City Public Schools. We're in 55 schools across the city with in-school programs, teaching artists, and have had residencies with numerous schools. Some of our favorite residencies have been CS 154, MS 279, in addition to our Apollo Academy Creative Workforce Training Program. What that training program is, it services young high school students interested in careers behind the scene. And over the last 15 years, we've served, these are paid 9-month internships, and we've had close to 175 young people come through that program. We've also seen them go on to find job opportunities either at the Apollo and or in performing arts centers in the city or across the country. So I just wanted to share and highlight some of the ongoing programs that we have because we've committed to mission and continue to deepen and expand that commission as we expand into the space, into the Victoria. We can go to the next slide. So the launch of the Victoria space stages at the Victoria will deepen our impact as a cultural home. We intended for these programs to also find a home at the Victoria, so that there is a year-round slate of artistic offerings featuring an array of diverse voices that are unique to Harlem, and access for local artists, artist collectives, and small, mid-sized, and Harlem and New York City-based arts organization for the development and presentation of new work. That's where we see the Victoria allowing us to continue to expand and forward our mission. Next slide, please. So community access has been a huge priority for the Apollo, and therefore, at the beginning of the journey toward the Victoria, we decided to engage CJAM, who's here with us today, CJAM Consulting, to work with our team and advise around a comprehensive approach around program design and community engagement that would give deep and urgent need, to meet a deep and urgent need. So here are a few programs that have come out of our work at CJAM that I wanted to share. One of the programs is Culture Forward. This is a theater rental program offering a Apollo subsidized rate of $500 a day to Harlem-based and Michelin arts and cultural arts organizations. Culture Forward rentals are expected to begin in October of 2024, approximately 6 months after the Victoria opening. We're launching a ticket subsidy program where all tickets to Apollo produced events in the inaugural season at the Victoria will be offered at $20. And also the Cultural Collaborators Program. Now this is a program for early artists and artist collectives, an incubator program that's curated by our programming staff. This is an opportunity and expected to begin in January 2025. But the conceptual design of the program is that we curated annual cohort of individual artists that will receive access to the space for rehearsals, for performances, technical support, assistance, and further support and artistic development moving forward. So at its inception, the Cultural Arts Collaborators Program was designed to address an overwhelming need for affordable performing arts space here in New York City. And this program was designed as a comprehensive solution that would ultimately improve the viability of its participants by offering additional support and including peer-to-peer learning and guidance. We're still in the formation and we're still in the design phase of this program, but we look forward to formally announcing it later on this season and obviously sharing it with this cohort to share with constituents. You'll hear more regarding our plan for this announcement and dissemination later on in this presentation. So as we move forward, I'd like to turn it over to Candace Jackson of CJAM to talk a little bit more about the cultural partnerships and entertainment consideration.
Thank you, Camila. So one of the questions that has come up and continues to be asked is, how do we know what that urgent need is? How do we determine what that urgent need is? And that's part of the work that CJAM has done with the Apollo. We started this work in about end of 2018. And so year after year, we've been doing the sort of like the technical work of scrubbing the numbers, but also the listening, the deep listening and the scanning to really understand and make sure that we were aware of what the urgent need is. Our work is just that. When I say our, I mean CJ's work is about making sure that we are bringing life to cultural organizations and really understanding, making a point to understand how cultural organizations embed in community. But with respect to this project, we wanted to make sure that we didn't simply rest on what we know to be true, but we took a scan of the entire landscape. And when we say the landscape, we're talking about Harlem and we're also talking about New York City. And so before I talk a little bit about understanding about the landscape itself and determining what exactly that urgent need is, I want to talk a little bit about the anchor tenants considerations. And so early in this work, cultural partnerships, as written in the license agreement, is one of the elements that was to be embedded in this work. And those cultural partnerships, I think we all know, but I'll just state it again here. Those cultural partnerships initially considered the Classical Theater of Harlem, Harlem Arts Alliance, and Jazzmobile. Early on, Harlem Arts Alliance, Jazzmobile, they determined they either didn't need space or they determined that they needed space elsewhere. Classical Theater of Harlem, in addition to National Black Theater, which came a little bit later, had deep conversations with the Apollo and CJAM around what their needs could be, what their needs prospectively would be, and those needs focused on both the offices and the theater. Over the course of time, and we all know where we are just in terms of the trajectory of the project, a number of things came to light. In some respects, the space in terms of the offices worked well, but the offices weren't ready. Organizations needed offices either immediately or within the next year. We're now 4-5 years since. So they had to figure something else out with respect to their offices. With respect to the theaters, the same is true in terms of the theater's availability and readiness. But what we also discovered in those conversations were real needs around capacity and real needs around capacity to be able to support rental in the space. And ultimately, in some respects, not all, we determined, or it was determined, that the space is really just prohibitive from a cost perspective. The Apollo's design was always to be able to make the space available to organizations at cost. When I say organizations, let me be specific: cultural partners, the anchor tenants at cost. The determination of those costs is part of the work that CJAM did to figure out exactly what will it cost to operate the space. And so all that pro forma design took into account what was happening at the Apollo in the moment, meaning what the historic theater cost to run, and then all of our comps that we pulled from the city. And so those comps included comps from organizations in Harlem, organizations throughout New York, to really understand what it costs for electricity, what did it cost for staffing and production in comparison to what the Apollo was already doing. But we didn't want to simply say, this is what the Apollo is doing in the historic theater, so this is what's going to automatically happen in the Victoria. We knew that we needed to really get an understanding of what was happening throughout the city in different kinds of spaces. So there were lots of permutations. We're talking about dance companies, we're talking about rehearsal spaces, we're talking about offices, we're talking about black box theaters, we're talking about multi-use facilities that can be performance space, that can be meeting spaces, etc. So all of those permutations gave rise to us determining what the costs were. And so those costs, and from a theater perspective, were in some ways prohibitive. But we were very clear about our ability to say, this is what we believe will cost us to run the Victoria. And so ultimately, Classical Theater of Harlem, as I mentioned, Harlem Arts Alliance and Jazzmobile had already determined that they were going to be in other spaces. Classical Theater of Harlem and National Black Theater made different decisions with respect to their offices and then their production needs in those moments. We are still desirous of having conversation about them coming to the space and still being able to rent the space at cost, because even since then, we've been able to continually scrub those numbers and get the costs down from even where we were. And so we're hoping that we'll be able to meet in a way that the space is accessible to them at that cost point. So those conversations are not foreclosed. We're hoping that we'll be able to, now that the space will be soon to open, it's imminent, we'll be able to have conversations about them taking advantage of renting the theater at the Apollo's cost. So I say that specifically because there's no markup, there's no premium, there's no profit. It's about making sure that the costs are covered. I will also mention that the additional conversations that we had with organizations were several, and we just put a couple of them on the screen. African Film Festival, Movement Theater Company, National Black Fest, Fire Next Time Festival. And these are our organizations that we were, and in some cases still are talking to about the same thing. What their capacity is and what their need is for office space, be it a desk or 2 desks, and what their need is with respect to theater space, rehearsal space, production space, tech space. And so those conversations are ongoing. The same is true, the same that was true for the original anchor tenants is true for them with respect to their needs and their needs being urgent or their needs being 12 months down the line. And so we're hoping that at the point at which the space opens, they are still in the space, some of them, where they need and they can access the space given exactly what the space is offering with respect to the production and operating capacity. And I think that's actually that's just the point that I just made at the very end. So we're still in those conversations. And the last thing that I want to say before I turn it over to Aldo is just a little bit more about the kinds of organizations that we talk to beyond those that are on this screen. I think that one of the conversations, one of the questions is, what do we mean when we say we're operating at cost, and what do we mean when we say market value or below or above market? Those kinds of conversations involve everything that I just described with respect to the scanning that we've done, the comps that we've done, and we took into account everything from spaces that are subsidized through subsidy programs like NYSCA's dance residency program that offers spaces at subsidy from $10 to $15 an hour just for rehearsal, to the Governor's Island space, which is completely subsidized. But these are state subsidies, right, that provide spaces to itinerant organizations, dance organizations, theater organizations at a fully subsidized level or close to fully subsidized level. We also took a look at spaces that are on offer without subsidy, and the ranges that we found, just a little bit of the information, of the ranges that we found went from $20 an hour to $250 an hour, for example, just for a rehearsal space. From a production perspective, it went from $200 a day to $4,500 a day. I mean, there's a lot of layers in there, but we're talking about spaces that are available just to rent the space, or spaces that are available, what we call 4 walls, meaning all the production stuff that you get, all the stuff that you need. And so there are a lot of, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of permutations, a lot of different data points. But when we say we looked at what is accessible from a market perspective, those are all the kinds of conversations or all the kinds of questions that we considered: rehearsal, production, performance space, and what kind of performance space that gives us that really, really, really big range of $10 an hour to $4,500 a day. So as you can see, there's a lot baked in there. So when we talk about things like the Apollo's subsidy or Culture Forward program at $500 a day, we feel really great and really strongly about our ability to be in that space at what we believe is a really strong market position that we believe will be accessible to cultural organizations and artists. So I'll end there and turn it over to Aldo.
Thank you. Next slide.
Yeah.
Thank you, Candace. We at the Apollo are very, very aware that we're a very important anchor institution in Harlem. And we feel that responsibility to our mission and the community every day. So we just want to talk a little bit about our workforce and what we can do together to promote that workforce. We average approximately 700 employees a year. 77 of those employees are full-time employees. The balance of them are employees that we engage in the theaters. The more the theaters are lit, the more opportunity we have to hire ushers, ticket takers, crew, and so forth. the makeup of our company, and we feel very proud about this. 317 of the 692 are Black or African American. 164 are Hispanic or Latino. Of our 78 full-time staff, 42 of them are Black or African American, and 19 are Hispanic or Latino. That system that we have when taking on the Victoria, we're hoping to continue that very same process. Currently, we believe that we will have 8 to 10 full-time employees at the Victoria. And as we begin to program, that number will, of course, skyrocket. And at the moment, we're thinking somewhere between 25 to 50 additional staff in the year. So as an anchor institution on 125th Street, we're thinking that on an annual basis, we're hiring 700 to 800 people to help us get through the work that we feel we need to be doing. As importantly, we'd be very, very happy to work with the local officials and local community to help us promote our workforce. You know, we do go out regularly. Anytime we're looking to hire, we post just about everywhere that we can. If we can work with local institutions in finding the staff that we need, we provide training on a regular basis. We provide uniforms. We're a full service institution in that regard, and we would look very much forward to working with you and the local community in that regard. Thank you. And I would turn it over to Fatima.
Yes, hi everyone. Fatima, Chief Marketing Officer at the Apollo. I think I might be the only person here that was born in Harlem. I guess at the Apollo. It's right. All right, so I was born in Harlem. My dad actually went to the mosque number 7. He owned a business in Harlem. I have deep roots, even though I live in Bed-Stuy, and I think that's important as we talk about him. I'm here every day. But all that to say is I have a personal and professional connection to Harlem, and that informs the work that we do to service our community. And when I say community, I'm really talking about Harlem and the zip codes that are usually associated with the Upper Harlem Empowerment Zone. We kind of use those zip codes as measurement, and definitely if anyone has more ideas around what the new Harlem zip codes are, welcome to hear what those are. But we're talking about those zip codes, and also very clearly about the neighborhood that we're in, right? So we're really talking about programs that are going to service people who are walking past the Apollo, that live near the Apollo, that study near the Apollo. That's really important to me. So on the screen, you'll see some of the things that we're doing currently. When I say the Apollo, I'm talking about the Victoria and the Historic Theater. All of this is under one umbrella. It's really important. I would love for you all to be with me on this, that this Victoria project is part of the Apollo. It's the same staff working on all of this, and we're seeing this as an extension of our brand. So the first thing that comes up, and I definitely want to remind people about, is our ticket accessibility. We have a number of programs. One is Half Off of Harlem. Hopefully some of you have heard of it. We've given out more than 1,200 tickets, half off tickets to our programs. We also have a number of free programs. The last one we had was the free screening of Malcolm X, the Met Opera screening, which was, I'm not sure if it was completely sold out, but we got a lot of great feedback about people being able to see that opera and not have to spend hundreds of dollars to see it at the Met. We have a program tomorrow, if anyone's available, the Winter Wonderland program. Please join us. Black Entrepreneurs Day. I mean, the list goes on of programs that we do, career panels. So just a reminder about that, and that will be ongoing, and things like that will be happening at the Victoria. And as I think Camila mentioned, all Apollo Presents programs at the Victoria will be no more than $20 for everyone. Harlem, everyone, anyone, no more than 20, which I think is really exciting. And there are going to be some amazing programs coming up at the Victoria. Please join us. Camila already talked about education. School Day Live programs are only $5. We have an internship program that we just, we announced the new application process yesterday. We'd love to be working with all of you to make sure that word gets out about that paid internship for high schoolers. We have a college program. As Camille mentioned, in-school programs. We're also working with our partners in the community. We worked with the 125th Street bid during COVID to give out grants to local businesses. And I think people really appreciated that. And that was a really great partnership. We did that for 3 years, I think. We participated in Malcolm X Day Blackout. We participated in Harlem Week. We're showing up for the African American Day Parade this year because I want to be on that float. Working with Harlem influences and media. And I know a question came up about how we plan to promote all these programs to the community. And it's going to be a multi-channel approach because reaching our folks requires more than social media. So I just want to say that out loud. Normally, social media is like the first way we go with stuff, but whenever we're trying to do things that we feel are need, some extra support, it's hand to hand, it's posters, it's going to the businesses, it's reaching out to all of you. So all of those things will be happening. Radio, press. We did receive some support to advertise the opening, so we will be doing a bus and subway ad campaign as well as hopefully working with the BID to do the banners around 125th Street. So this will be a multi-channel approach, and I invite all of you, if you're interested, to please spread the word about what we're doing. So I'll pass it off to. And oh yes, and Mayo, our new community relations manager, started in October, so you'll be seeing him and myself a lot more. And then I'm passing it off to.
I think it's
Michelle.
Michelle, I think it's
you. As you can see, the team, the leadership has worked extremely diligently over a long span of time to realize the vision of this, the Apollo now, and including the Victoria theaters. And so as I stand here, I feel an incredible responsibility to ensure that this work, this growth is sustainable. The Apollo will celebrate its 90th anniversary at the top of the year. And, it's here with the leadership of Bobby Schiffman, Percy Sutton, Janelle Procope. We will be here for the next 90 years with this expansion. And that sustainability, key to that sustainability, is investing in our community where we live and where we serve. If we are not, first of all, accountable in that regard, we are not sustainable. And that has been the legacy, and that will continue to be the evolutionary arc of the Apollo as we serve our mission. And, building that financial viability into the future, we need to be adaptive to the environment. Coming out of the pandemic, you see many national, local, regional theaters are in financial distress. They're operating at a structural deficit and have had significant, reductions in their staff and in their programming. Not least of which is the Public Theater, BAM. It's crossing the country with its impact. Many foundations also are changing, their focus from social justice to more humanitarian crises, and are also impacted by financial conditions. We will evaluate our model so that we make sure we are profitable. We need to be profitable, and our model includes not only, philanthropic support, earning support from major donors, but also our earned income, our operations from the Apollo, and drawing an audience, a paying audience to the institution. So, we will work to create this model so that we are sustainable, and understanding that, there are several elements that are part of that model, but this is our commitment. I was not born in Harlem. But, my father, who came to Harlem in the 60s from the Army, his mentor was Adam Clayton Powell. And that shaped, the rest of his life as an entrepreneur in Liberty City with the dry cleaners on Dr. Martin Luther King Boulevard, and taking over the Carver Theater on 7th Avenue. So as a kid, I pressed clothes at the dry cleaners, and at night worked in Carver Theater. I would warm the hot dogs and serve the soda. And so my father also had a radio station on WEDR He served in Shirley Chisholm's campaign and had further community activism roles, but that was shaped by Harlem. And I feel as though I'm coming back home, and I'm honored to be with this team, and I'm honored to get to know all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much. That was quite a thorough and needed presentation. I think that those of us that have been around this table, whether we're new or have been here forever, you know, we are always happy to hear the updated information as it comes to this, as it applies to this project. So thank you so much for being here and for providing that for us. Okay, so board members, at our last meeting, we had quite a vibrant conversation that was a lot of questions that we had about this project and about this lease and things of that nature. And so now that the Apollo is here for us to engage in that conversation, I'm happy to do it. While it looks like we might not make a quorum, this is still a informational portion that I think is necessary and needed for us to move forward in making the decision that we need to make. Let's have a ordered process. You know, I know if there are questions, you know, as usual, raise your hand. You'll be put in a mental queue so that we can get through this, you know, orderly and quickly. And let's limit it maybe to 2 questions per round, like not 2 questions today, but you know, as you go, if you have 2 questions and then we have time for other people to maybe ask their questions and then come back around if you have more questions. Is that fair? Everybody agrees with that? Yes, Council.
Through the chair, if I can just please just make one sort of disclaiming statement. As Chair Foster noted, unfortunately, it does not appear that we will make quorum today, so we will not be able to formally consider or deliberate over the voting item pertaining to the lease operating agreement. Certainly not. That doesn't mean you can't ask questions based on the presentation that was given today, but I do need to ask as a procedural and legal matter that you not tie your questions specifically to the voting item that was to be on the agenda today, but will now need to be considered at a later date.
Okay, let's start.
I know, this isn't a question.
Oh, yeah.
This is, translate.
What does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean? Really clear about what you're saying. You can and cannot ask. Sure. Basically, there shouldn't be any conversation regarding the merits of the voting item, the actual board materials that have been presented to you. You know, there shouldn't be any indication of which way you think you may be swayed to vote based on the presentation that was given today. Notwithstanding, you know, if you have questions that sort of bubbled up based on the presentation today, please do feel free to go ahead and ask those.
So basically, only questions on the presentation.
Yes, please. That's what I needed to. Gotcha. Thank you.
Gotcha. Okay. Yes. I'm always the one that jumped in at the beginning of the line. I mean, you know, don't be shy, Keisha. So I had some questions about the presentation. It really is they're kind of detailed, kind of getting in some of the nitty gritty. It was, so for example, of the 175 people who came through there was a program that you mentioned. I didn't catch the name of the program.
Apollo Theater Academy.
Apollo Theater Academy. How many of those are from Harlem? The kids?
That's a good question. I don't have that number right off the bat specifically from Harlem, because the application process is open to young people, high school students across the 5 boroughs. But what I can say anecdotally, even just last year, we choose a cohort of about 7 to 9 young kids who are part of the paid internship program. And just even last year, we had 3 from Harlem. But I don't have a total number for you of that 175 location, but I'm happy to follow up.
Okay. And do you prioritize?
We absolutely do.
Harlem applicants and is it high school students?
It's high school students, absolutely.
So I would like to know more, just about your outreach to the high schools. I had an experience last year where I went to the Eagle Academy, which is a tremendous institution, led by our now school's chancellor. And I was speaking about Percy Sutton Percy Sutton, yes. And brought up obviously the Apollo, and I asked students to raise their hands to tell me, if they knew what the Apollo was, and I was staggered because very few. Because the Eagle Academy is 10 blocks away from the Apollo, so I'm curious to know what schools you're reaching out to for that and other, so the marketing, as you were talking about your outreach, how your outreach is gonna have to be well beyond social media. I'm, outreach for all the programs, including the internship. How are you finding the people that you're trying to reach? Specifically, obviously for this program, it's small. It sounds like it's 7 to 9 students. That's what we want to know, or I, speaking on behalf of the borough president and personally, would like to know more about how you're actually reaching out to the schools and the community that is boots on the ground, if you will. And I'll back up and just say, I've heard from, I've said this to many of you directly. I've heard, and we've said this at this table. So this is where the conversation is coming from. I've said this at this table, where this question is coming from, is that the theater feels inaccessible to a lot of members of the community. It sounds like you're doing great work to present opportunities, but as you alluded to, Fatima, you got to really go out and grab people. So I don't know, you probably don't have the answer to the question about how you're actually reaching the students right now, but that is a question.
A little bit of it. As a mother of a teenager, I'm going to say it's not an easy job.
Yeah.
It's hard to get teens to do stuff unless it's their idea. But I know that education department is embedded in the schools. They work mostly with the career counselors and the guidance counselors in the schools to try and get the kids to come. We've been struggling with trying to reach the kids directly because it's not a sexy thing for the team to work with an organization directly. So we're always trying to find ways to get to the kids, but I know the education department is definitely working with different schools, and I know they have a couple of in-school programs that a lot of the kind of feeder schools for the internship program. I know Wildly is one of them. We have a close relationship with them, but we can definitely provide the list of schools where we have the deepest relationship, and then there's always room to grow. This is where we'd love some support in getting the word out. Iowa's here now. He's going to be attending community board meetings. I know we've been sending out information about jobs and stuff like that. So we can definitely always do a better job at that. We definitely could use some support in getting the word out to whoever is interested.
For sure.
Such a pleasure to meet you. Before we leave, I would love to give you my email. There are schools, the school you said you were in, and students didn't know much about the Apollo. I would love to be connected if you have a connection there so that we can get that information out. I am not born in Harlem like Fatima. I am from, it's such a shame. I'm from Baltimore City, but when I moved to New York, I decided to make Harlem my home because it's such an iconic community and it means a lot to Black people around the world. But I also bring a community organizing background to this community relations job. And as a community organizer, we'll knock on your door and we have that grassroots instinct. And so I would love to get the information about that school. And I will be knocking on doors to schools in Harlem to build those connections and to build those bridges and to make sure that what we do at the Apollo is accessible to everyone in this beautiful and iconic community.
Excellent.
Just to answer even, to piggyback on what Fatima has just said, is that it's particularly with the schools, it's really important, I think, for as Michelle talked about, the 90-year longevity of Apollo. Because young people, it was our mission, particularly when starting the education program, that every young person in New York City has at least some touch point to the Apollo. That's our mission, right? So part of how we try to start to do that is through school tours and offering school tours with schools all around New York City, specifically Harlem just this past year, Afield, Randolph, Roland Patterson, Harlem Hebrew, Village Academy, Columbia Heights, 54 Booker T. Washington, were some schools who participated in our school tour program. Then the next step from a school tour, after you've taken a tour, you've been inside the building, we invite young people to school day lives. Which is the $5.
But what is it? It wasn't explained.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Absolutely, no.
Let me, okay.
Sure.
We have 3 other people around the table who have questions, so we're gonna let you finish, and then we're gonna go to Ursine, Deneen, and then Teresa, and then we'll come back to you, okay?
School day live, school day programming. So if you've ever been on a field trip with your 5th grade class and you've gone to a theater, sometimes your first theater experience to experience a show about the blues. That's what School Day Live is. And in our perspective, it is an opportunity to have school day programming around Black culture. So we do sometimes at our height, 9 of those a year. As Fatima has shared, we offer those.
Always sold out.
Always sold out. Our top ticket price is $5 per student. In many cases, we are subsidizing those free. So that's $1,500 per School Day Live, our theater filled with young people. And again, how we get the word out, as we said, is through our residency programs. We have teaching artists that are from the Apollo that are embedded in schools across New York City that are doing workshops, that are doing, whether it's long-term residencies or one-off workshops. And 2 years ago, we were in close to 55 schools across the city. So that's an opportunity where we're going into the schools in order to make sure that we are touching and feeling the students as well as the teachers and inviting them back to the theater.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Ernestine.
I was just gonna recommend moving forward. When you come to us, if it could be data, zip code related. So this way, we can physically see students, the groups, and the touch, so that as we pull together to be better partners, the zip codes will help us see where you're going. Connection.
Deneen.
Hi, it's so great having you on here. This kind of connects the dots a little bit. And I thought everything you all talked about was really great. But we as board members, or I can speak for myself, didn't know that all of this exists. So that's why this was really important. And everybody here is a stakeholder. And we have constituents. And we know for sure that our constituents are not seeing these services or hearing about it because we didn't know about it at all. So it's good that you brought that to us, and we would like to connect with you as well, because not only does the chair sit on other boards that could utilize this, and we do have students that we deal with, community board, elected officials, that are here.
District leaders,
yes,
who
that
have
can
boots
get this
on the
information
ground.
out. And that would be very important for us to tell them what you're doing, because we don't know what you're doing and who you're servicing. And that's to, Ernestine, and also to Peach's point, like she said, she can connect you with schools. We can connect you with so many people, so the resources are right in the room and you're going around us. You're not talking to us directly, so we can help you to do better, and we can do better about what you're doing.
Well, before we leave, I'll give you my number.
Sure.
And you call me anytime, just don't call me Colette.
Say something also, like, I just want to echo, we can definitely use more support. The capacity is the capacity, right? We're a nonprofit and, there's always room to grow. But I will say that we have a number of programs that are well sold with Harlem community there. So as much as there are definitely more room to grow, I just want to push back and say that there are people that know about our programs because they're in the house and they are from Harlem enjoying the things that we're doing. And we have feedback from people who say thank you and they appreciate the work. And we'll definitely provide that data so that you can have that information as well.
Thank you.
Teresa.
So I'm gonna start off with some comments, hope that doesn't count to my 2 questions. Something that means and I agree with you. I know you said you have people there from Harlem, we hear from them, we don't.
Okay,
So you might.
Yeah.
It's almost like when tree falls in the woods.
Yeah.
The second thing is, and I'm here on behalf of Senator Clear, so I have enough on my own. I'm gonna be Senator Clear, okay? So hold it against me or not, I'm gonna tell you what she would say if she was here.
Okay.
First thing is, and thank you so much, I know you're doing the role. You mentioned toward the end profit, and that's important. I think that's probably more, with all due respect, appropriate for ESD specific meetings instead of onward. For us, I don't care. Again, Senator Clear, not Teresa. That's not the main concern. It's not that it's not important. We understand the value of making a profit, right? It's a business, profitable for or nonprofit, but that's not the main goal. And the concern is that when that becomes so important that the driver of the business, as it were, starts to eliminate all of those other things, right? And so I think that for this group, for our district, for my principal, it cannot be profit-driven model. And not to deviate from business as it is, but it has to be community. There are very few opportunities, especially in Harlem and New York City, to have new developments, to have new things coming online. And so to the extent that we have some say, that we have some knowledge, that's extremely important. Going into my questions, the $500 a day subsidy for Culture Forward, it said Culture Forward is a program. It didn't say it was the only program. So what is the requirement for Culture Forward, and what other programs are there where a Culture Forward rate would not apply?
Sure, do you want me to answer that?
We can all answer, so yeah, you can
sure.
start and we can add on.
Okay, great. So the Culture for All program is meant to be a rental subsidy program that is open for application for organizations that are below 750,000. So we are talking about mid-sized arts organizations, cultural arts organizations that are also giving preference, obviously, to Harlem arts organizations, which is hence the work that we've been doing with CJAM was an opportunity to truly outreach with organizations to ask, what is it that you need? And what is a touch point that would make sense? So we could be designing a program that would be viable for arts organizations to meet that need. In that respect, also, we, this will be it's not just an open free for all rental program. You don't just apply and get in. Like, we are able to curate to make sure that the percentages from a zip code perspective, organizations that have access to that Culture Forward are and giving priority to Harlem base. So we put that into the design process. So that is one specifically, again, the rental subsidy program.
It's a question. 1A. I don't want So with that $500, I get in, I qualify. Does that include the bells and whistles, or is it just the space? Like, do I get the production? Do I get the support that maybe I get if I pay the premium rate?
Right, that's a great question. It includes the space and the basic staff that comes with the space. The bells and whistles are all of those variable costs, which we did automatically build into the model and pushes that number way up. And we don't want to penalize anyone who doesn't need the bells and whistles, they just need the space by building that in automatically. And so those bells and whistles, as you say, those would be in addition to, again, also at cost. And they don't necessarily automatically need or come in a package. So it's not like this and then all of that. It can be a la carte. And so I also want to just go back to your first question to make sure that I understood it. What everything Camila said is exactly right, but I feel like you were also asking what else is there. And to be super transparent, what else is there is to be determined. Everything that you've seen thus far are all of what we've contemplated through all of through the last few years of working and understanding what's on offer. We'd love to have a Governor's Island subsidy model, right? But that's fully subsidized, and that's not for everybody, right? Like it's also smaller, big program, but it's to be determined so that after we get into space and we see how it's actually landing with organizations, who's taking advantage, who needs space for just rental, who needs space with bells and whistles, that we'll be able to sort of take a look and recalibrate. Okay, so what else do we need to be adding into this? How do we need to change it? And then what is the opportunity to I'm going to use your word because I like it, flex differently, right?
I just wanted to offer one additional bit of clarity. The $500 cultural forward rental was, the $500 number was, we arrived at that number to make sure that at the most basic level, you could actually produce an event. Because we have seen a lot of subsidy programs who say, oh, your rent is subsidized. But then when it comes time to figure out what it takes to actually bring an audience into the space, it's like, oh, you want the lights turned on? So as Candace pointed out, it doesn't include if you're doing the whiz, FQ and, the witch falling into the floor, Linda coming in from the ceiling. But if you wanted to do a most basic presentation, you absolutely can do a full presentation at the $500 rate.
One of the things we do have at the Victoria, it's fully equipped. I mean, we have lighting, we have sound equipment, what doesn't, and we have a full-time staff. We have 2 full-time staff. So the basic, what we call rent, includes a full-time staff, which includes 1 person in the box office. And so that's already included because that's a requirement to keep the space open. Once you get inside the space, every show I've ever been involved in, everyone does something different. But not to have to bring in lighting or sound or other technical equipment, which we have in-house already, and operable by people who are already on our payroll. So that to me is a pretty big advantage. When you're coming in and paying $500, you're kind of getting that. And then if there's additional labor because of what you are bringing in yourself, then of course, we never calculate it because we don't know what that would be, right? Every production has its own sense of what they need to wow an audience. Advertising, promoting, I mean, those are things that, are also required.
And I'd just like to add this one clarifying point about being profitable. I need to clarify that's being structurally balanced. It's so that we can afford to pay for the programs. So we are not looking to drive profitability, we're looking to be structurally balanced. So if we're $1 in the black, we're balanced, right? So that we can, and that $1 or that $100, invests back in our programming. That doesn't go to anyone else. So it all goes back into the community. So, I could need to choose different language, but being structurally balanced is what the goal is. And to raise as much funds as we can so that it goes back into, the Apollo's programming and invest in the community.
If I could just, we're a public, as a not-for-profit, we're a public entity in essence, and our tax returns are what we call our 990 financials. We're audited every year. They're very much online. You can have access to them. We don't call them profits. We call them a surplus, and it's something that we pray every year for. And if you can go back through the history, we don't make millions of dollars in surplus, and what we do make, a lot of the funds that we've been able to raise are to support the programs so that we can have at least a surplus at the end of the year. We know that deficits will just eventually erode the institution.
Let me say this, and I'm sorry, let me just say this because I don't want to get you thinking that I don't know, the senator doesn't have an understanding, right? So this is about the difference between a for-profit and a nonprofit. Is that a for-profit calls their profit. A nonprofit calls their profit revenue. You say surplus, so it's fine. Like I got it, it's okay. And I expect you to have that. 990s are, government requires you. I know your salary, depending on where it is. I can look that up tonight. It's got to be on there, okay? So for number 2, and this is for workforce. The statistics you gave were good. They're a little jarring, and I think it's the way you broke it down. So you have 692 employees, right? And like less than 20% were of color. Right. Then you broke it down again and you have the full time. Oh, no, half. No, so less than 50%. Because 317, that's 634. Yeah, 690. So less than 50% are of color.
Are black.
Then you
Or
black. Okay, I'm sorry. Are black. Okay. Again, Senator Clear was here. We're talking about the black number. 78 full time, right? Which is a huge drop. 692, 42 are homo black. So I just want to emphasize, just sort of the workforce and Harlem and the Apollo and, Harlem and blackness is just, it's interesting. The Victoria fumbled the ball twice. They had 2 job fairs this past summer.
I did not know about them. I don't think Curtis knew about them. I walked past and they were opening up the door.
Well,
The big tourist.
yeah, to be
The
clear,
hotel,
this is
but
the hotel. Yeah.
it's not the hotel. I'm saying don't follow their footsteps. Because that was a huge problem.
Let me say that again, I'm sorry, we couldn't hear the whole thing, you said they had two job
They had
fairs.
two job fairs for the hotel. I mean, it's right there. It's fronted, right? So you're right next to the Apollo. You're walking past, they open the doors, and what's going on? It's a job fair. They did it twice and did not let us know. Those are jobs in the hotel. And I know it's a separate entity, separate project. I understand it, but I'm saying we can't create this precedent, right? Where we just are so excited to move forward and we're not really doing the work. So we're not really social media first. We're sort of, analog girl in the digital world. We're paper first. You just got a paper in our office. So when you do the hiring for this new part that you're planning in Victoria, please go the analog way first. That's what's gonna be my principle, right? That's the first thing. So I'll end it with Harlem first, Harlem last, Harlem forever.
Thank you very much. Okay. Those are 2 questions. Okay. With one A. I got it. Okay, we got Curtis, we got Shane, we got Keisha.
Well, first, I just definitely want to say, love you guys, Apollo. Like, I remember my first experience with my sister, seeing Sly and the Family Stone. Sly showed up. And as well as also the Spinners. Incredible shows. And I just remember just captivated there checking this out. So I definitely also like Camilla, and we spoke about this in terms of, let's say, the point person. If I'm a community group from the community and I'm interested in actually doing something at the Apollo, who should I talk to? Who is the point at the Apollo? And thanks also for engaging the Hip Hop Film Festival. Harlem's own, it's beautiful. So who might that point person be?
I mean, this was a big reason, number one, for our community affairs position. So that there are more visibility on the ground in many different spaces. My office and the programming, we get requests on a daily basis that come to programming@apollotheater.org as it relates to programming. And Curtis, in the same way that you shared with me, a potential program wanting to be connected, we want to make sure that we're visible and that we're accessible. People come to the security desk every day, and wanting to speak and ask, right? And we want to be as responsive as possible. But I think in regards from from a community fair, we want to make sure that this position, this role is front and center.
Okay, so it'll be my brother from Baltimore. And not The Wire, but good.
And I also put up the last slide because we skipped over it. Apollo also left this contact information as well on their presentation.
All right, wonderful. That was it?
That's it.
Shana?
This is quick, not a question. One, thank you all. We are excited. This is a pitch for the Empowerment Zone wage tax credit. You may already be taking advantage, but if you are not, please do. $3,000 per resident, right? So I do want to continue to encourage our local businesses to please hire local. It benefits us. That credit expires in 2025. We should be taking full advantage of it. And the second one is appropriation season will soon be upon us. If there is someone who, federal dollars, we need to keep it in the community. And one way to do that is to apply for appropriations funding. That will be happening very shortly. So I am encouraging our local community organizations to get ready because you will need to hit send soon. And I'm happy to send funding information and grant information to the appropriate staff.
Excellent. Don't lose it.
Michelle was like, what's her name?
My meeting with the state at 8:00 this morning.
Okay, I got a call just shortly before this meeting. Actually, it was about the cultural institutions, and I appreciate, Candace, you're bringing up the cultural institutions, the
anchor partners. You know, look up at this image, you see right there, you see Apollo, Harlem Arts Alliance, and Classical Theater of Harlem, as you know. What's that?
Yeah, I've been looking at it.
Yeah. Familiar with all the backstory in terms of all of that, and you know, it was really so. Two-part question. Two-part. Get it in there. So the first is Classical Theater of Harlem, a really well-resourced institution, Harlem institution. It's not a tiny little mom and pop. If Classical Theater of Harlem couldn't afford to take up space in the Victoria, gives me great concern about who will be able to. I'm sorry, three-part question? I wanted to know about the 52A, about the I did want to know, it's just, I actually wanted to piggyback with you, but I knew I would have able to. With the Culture Forward, how many organizations annually will be able to access the Cultural Forward rates? So that was one I wanted to ask to piggyback on you, but I didn't want to come out of order.
That's okay.
Madam Chair. So I want to know how many of those, will be able to how many annually will be able to, to make themselves available to Cultural Forward. Two, wanted to raise a concern about if CTH can't afford to be in the Apollo, how will others? And then three, recently I understood that several other organizations have approached either ESD or the Apollo, namely Dance Theater of Harlem, the Lindy Hop organization, and the Harlem Film Festival, and have not gotten anywhere. And I don't know, do you know anything about this?
Harlem Film House.
Harlem Film House, no? Yes?
No, I don't know. No, I don't know about those last two. I do know a little bit more about classical theater, but I can get to that after.
Okay. So you have none of you have heard about Dance Theater of Harlem?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
But
So the question is, who are you talking to seriously right now? I know you said that the other three went away.
Yeah.
But who are you seriously talking to now? Because I think it's really important that this board understands, who's going to be using those spaces, not just the theaters, but the office space. Because obviously that is an important component of, of the property that you are overseeing. So who are you talking to about that now?
Yeah. Through the chair. Oh, yes. If I could please just interject with a caveat, just with a quick caveat, quick caveat. I would just add the caveat, to the extent that they can share the status of ongoing negotiations that aren't public yet, but to the extent they can.
Okay, sounds good. I just want to just make sure, it was touched upon in the presentation, so I was not outside of the lines.
But what if they waive their privilege? It's their privilege. Well, not their counsel. It's their privilege. They choose to share.
Yes. So that's.
Thank you for the caveat. I think I got all of that. So I'll speak first because I'm sure that others will want to chime in. So I'll go quickly because I don't know how much time we have left. So the conversations that we had with CTH all the way back to 2019, 1819, excuse me, actually gave rise to part of what you see here. We weren't even talking about Culture Forward at that point because it wasn't even on offer. It evolved. It was not a part of the conversations then. And so that question, that very, very real question, is it's not just about CTH, it's about everybody. If they can't access it, who can? What is the point? I mean, I like a financial model, but I don't need to write another financial model that doesn't actually live, that doesn't have legs and can't actually be activated in order to make sure that organizations are using the space. And so I just want to say that ticket subsidy, Culture Forward, culture collaborators, all of those are outgrowths of those conversations because we knew, or we were learning, we didn't know at the outset, we were learning in 2019, 18, 19, 20, that it wasn't working. The numbers they were numbering, but they weren't accessible. And so I can say from memory that at that time we were talking about costs because once we had sort of like written it all out and scrubbed it and looked at it 18 different ways. We were looking at costs that were somewhere like $30 a square foot for the space based on our costs. That was prohibitive. But we have since then, from the theater's the office perspective, gotten that down to 20, roughly 20. From the theater perspective, it was like $33 a square foot, and we're down to like 25. And so when I said we're hoping that we were able to have those conversations again, we meant that because we've done a lot of work since then, not on our own, but because of those very real conversations where organizations were like, this is what I got, this is what I can do, this is what I can't do, this is what so-and-so wants to charge me, this is what I'm paying now. I cannot pay any more than I'm paying now. So that's in response, I think, to your question about CTH, but it actually relates to everyone. I just had a conversation with Anna Glass at DTH 2 days ago. So I'm not sure how that comes up because we are always in conversation with organizations that we talked to since 2018. And since, what are you doing? What are you up to? Afro-Latin Jazz Alliance. They were like, we are ready. We weren't ready. The space wasn't ready. But it doesn't mean that I'm not going to go back and say, how are you guys doing? What is your status now? Can we be in conversation again? So some of it is actually that, just following up on conversations that we had, and we have a list. There were about 40 organizations, maybe more, that we either did a scan on, that we got information about, or we were in conversation with. So we were not in conversation with 40 groups, but I'm just saying sort of like overall. So DTH, who did I say? Alja. The two that you mentioned, I've not heard about them, but we are here for those conversations. So we should be, when we talk about contacts, all the contacts that up on the screen, IO, these are the folks and these are the ways that we want organizations to be in touch with us or give us their contact information because that's also part of CGM's work. The moment we hear about an organization, we reach out to them. So not now, but some time ago, we were in monthly or bi-monthly conversations with Verdery at the Empowerment Zone. Verdery, who have you talked to? We know that you're talking about a whole bunch of other stuff that's probably privileged, but can you let us know if there are any folks that are out there that are looking for space? These are the kinds of conversations that we've been having. And I think I missed the second question. You asked three.
Who are you? Oh, sorry. Yeah, I got that middle part.
Well, it was how many per year?
Oh, yes.
So we can answer it.
Yeah, I want to answer.
Yeah, so we don't have a set number of organizations because we haven't launched the program yet, right? And it's based on an RFP process. But what we've averaged is between 100 to 200 show nights per year that's going to be made available at that rate. That's what we built into our model. Yeah. Okay. And that's across our 2 performance art spaces. When we open up the RFP, we will see how many organizations are able to respond and take part of that and hopefully have some very interesting data to report back on next year. Yeah. As it relates to also, I just want to piggyback a little bit about who we're talking to and what Candace had also shared. Throughout this 5-year process, right, we also learned a lot of how arts organization needs change and shift throughout the pandemic. Working remotely, not needing as much, not wanting to put their resources into office space, but put it on the stage. We then took a lot of that thinking into our Cultural Collaborators program. We wanted to make it open to be able to offer office space. Maybe you don't need a full room, but you're an artist collective or an individual artist. So if you're part of the Cultural Collaborators cohort, I might just need a desk to write for 3 days, or an office space to have a meeting with a funder or 3 other artists. The Cultural Collaborators program is meant to be that kind of flexibility, but still provide the technical assistance and resources that we have at the Victoria. And that's sort of the concept of where that program that arose from.
And just to add more names, right? So one of the organizations that we've been in conversation with, which is on the slide, is the Movement Theater. And a big part of the conversation we've been having with them, they absolutely would not yet be ready to take over the full space. They were founded in Harlem about 15 years ago. They do their gala every year at Jenny's. They had to move downtown because they weren't able to find space. And so part of this conversation has been bringing them back to Harlem, right? Like so that they can maintain that connection to the community. And in addition to talking with the CTHs and the large, venerable, very structured organization, what Cultural Collaborators was speaking to was creating access for independent artists and informal collectives, because in our research, even with programs like Governor's Island, LMCC's program, which is on Governor's Island, we found that these programs tend to really favor organizations that have a very traditional nonprofit board, executive directors, 501c3 structure. And we see that a lot of artists, especially in Harlem and in Black communities, aren't working in that way contemporarily, right? Me and Fatima are going to get together and do a show this year. We are now William and Fatima Dance Inc. No, we don't have a 501c3. We don't have a fiscal sponsor, but and we have a following. And so Cultural Collaborators and Culture Forward has taken into consideration how the Apollo can be available to organizations working outside of a very traditional hierarchical structure.
So if I can also just give one update from
Can I just make a time check? It's 12:30. And we have, in addition to you, I'm not sure if Keisha, when you're done with your two-part question.
Yeah, like
Sure.
I'll look via email.
Okay, so after Keisha, we have Teresa, and then Terrence, is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, great. Teresa, yes.
Oh, me?
Yeah,
Oh, that's okay. I know Terrence don't. I look at Terrence and Terrence like, oh my God, what is Terrence?
Well, I was going to say something about the classical theater, but I can, unless you want to.
No, not
you want to deal
classical
with it
theater.
now?
No,
Okay.
you want to talk classical theater?
Well, I was just, since we were talking about it now, I was just
Yeah.
going to say something about it, or do you want me to wait till the end?
I'll try to
It is up to you guys.
Since it's
Whoever
relevant.
wants-
No,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So one thing I just want, it's kind of a part construction update and part of kind of what happened over the past 6 years. So as we all know, this project has taken a very long time to complete. We're looking at the light at the end of the tunnel, and as the last timeline stated, Apollo is preparing to open to the public, and as well as have opening activities for the new cultural unit at the Victoria Theater Development. With regard to the office space, the Apollo will be moving, as we all know, its current offices or has actually already moved its current offices from the existing historic Apollo Theater to the new Victoria to serve as their business and executive offices. The fourth floor offices will also be occupied by some Apollo staff, but there will be a large amount of vacant offices, which was the intended offices for the cultural partners. Back when the discussions were happening in earnest between Apollo, or I should say among Apollo, ESD, when Marion was here, as well as the possible future tenants, there was a little bit of confusion about the terms of the rent. And there was some expectation on behalf of some of the cultural tenants that the space would actually be rented for free. And that just was not economically feasible. As Candace mentioned, and as we all know, there are costs to operate a building. You got to turn on the lights, maintenance, cleaning, all that sort of stuff. And so what I've encouraged with Aldo and the rest of the Apollo team is that since we have this now vacant space, and as they mentioned before, they are still in conversations with classical theater for possible use of the studio space, rehearsal and theater space. But what I've encouraged Aldo and the rest of the Apollo team to think about with the vacant office is to perhaps think of a different model rather than a year-long lease, which maybe they may not be able to take. So some of the models that Fatima and Camila were just mentioning about possible kind of co-working, sharing a desk or, renting or leasing at shorter intervals that might be cheaper. And then as Candace mentioned, they are continually look at the cost. The final thing I'll say also about the kind of conversations that some of the tenants also, I don't want to discount also, it wasn't just about the financials. It was also about the length of time too. I mean, some of them, because of the length of the construction, just found space elsewhere. I don't remember which one it was, but one of them ended up going to Urban League. I know Harlem Arts Alliance chose to stay at its existing space. So that was also a big factor as well.
Having skirted very closely to not talking about just the presentation, I'm going to turn it back to Teresa.
Okay.
Let's stay with the presentation.
So Summer Soul. That was Governor's Island, right, this past year. Summer Soul. And so they tried to revive the Summer Soul.
No, it didn't happen.
No, where was it? Where was it?
Festival.
It was going to be on Randall.
Randall's. It wasn't. I guess that's the point.
It was supposed to have been both, actually.
Okay.
Randall's and Harlem.
Right, so, and so not Governor's Island, but I guess it sort of goes back to the, in such a historic cultural space, you know, and you have these moments in time, you know, 50th year of hip hop and celebrating this historic concert that occurred, you know, just from commentary, making sure that those opportunities are not missed. And again, not negating the business model. You have to be sustainable. I understand that, but these are the moments that it's just they're I don't want to say low hanging fruit, but these are the moments that we just cannot allow to pass through our fingers. Now, some of that's on the organizer. I'm not saying they didn't want to have it at St. Nicholas. I'm just saying we have to just sort of make this moment in time so accessible that we are pushing back against what has and continues to happen to Harlem, right? So that, you know, just thinking about that, we have to continue to be the mecca, right? No matter where you are in the world, this is the space. And so that has to sort of be the North Star, if I may, in driving, how do we make those things really happen here?
Absolutely.
Commentary. Question. You mentioned, and I get this too, right? You're gonna have, you know, get together, have a little dance, ink company. Let's discuss how we can move forward, either you or us supporting you in doing trainings on how to do a 501c3, right? It's not, easy, but it's not rocket science either. And I don't want to diminish it, but I mean, this is another way, right? We don't want to be prohibitive just for prohibitive. We want to basically say, you don't have a 501c3, you want to do a one-man show, you want to sit in the dark and do a monologue under a swinging light, I don't know what people do these days. You want to do that? Let me show you how to do this legally, right? And maybe get some grants, and maybe get some funding, and maybe, so maybe some clinics.
Yes, it's on the marketing plan for the Victoria.
Love that you said that, because that's a key tenet of the resources. When I said technical assistance, it was sort of but it was exactly that, right? Prior to coming to the Apollo 15 years, ran a small arts organization. It's now based in East Harlem, High Arts, and it's in my building. And we got our first 501c3 because we sat at the table, we took part in a program with LMCC. We learned about grant writing. We were able to take grant writing free and subsidized, right? Because we were that Harlem and Fatima, we were that William and Fatima dance company, hip hop theater festival, and it was programs like that that helped to support us. And then now 20 years later, that organization still exists serving community in Harlem. And so the idea of cultural collaborators was just that. But how do we make sure that there's access and entry points for artists and organizations at varying levels? So you don't have to have a 501c3 to access, right, the rental program. You know, but we're also, the program has helped to see our mission, right? And our mission is about the advancement of Black culture organizations, and that support explicitly and purposefully, and how that ultimately then seeps into the design of that ultimate program when we're inviting other artists into our space.
Exactly. See, everything I say isn't always controversial.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, it is 12:40, and you have one more.
This is I just wanted to ask, because I may have missed it. Will the slide deck be shared with the board?
Yes. Will you share it?
Yeah, we can share it. This is available. I'll send it to Curtis, and Curtis will disseminate it.
All right, send it to Rose.
Whoever sent it.
Yes. All right, this has been quite the discussion. See why you guys gotta come back often.
Invite us, we'll be here.
At this point of clarity, can one of us come anytime?
Well, you just get with Rose. Yeah, you're always welcome. I mean, it's love to meet you guys.
That's right, that's right.
Keisha?
Yes, and we would love. I don't know if I'm getting into the area that I'm not supposed to say anything, but
you know you are. No, you gotta just say it.
Come back annually with the stats. Focus on the zip code, the Black, the Hispanic, the Harlem zip codes. That's the, like, exactly, yes, we're gonna wanna see a presentation on the annual.
Yes.
Thank you.
And so if I might, could I invite Mr. Carvin to once again stand up and say your name and how we could, like, do you have an office number or are we only working cell phones these days? Because you are going to be quite the popular guy at the front. Just once again, state your name. If you don't want to share your phone number for the millions of people that watch this, it's okay.
No, that's completely fine. My name is Ayomide. It is a Yoruba name. That means my joy has arrived, though most days my partner does not agree. I am comfortable sharing my number. It is 410-905-5654. I have not changed it to a New York number for the interest of bill collectors.
Spelling of your name?
Oh, I put it here, and IO Carbon. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Nice.
Thank you so much.
Oh, that's the bottom. It's just
Carbon. IO.
Carbon like carbon copy of carbon paper at apollotheater.org.
Perfect.
Wait, it's A-I-O or A-Y-O?
A-Y-O.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Everyone, well, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Oh, well.
Do we? We're not ready? Okay, great. So, happy holidays. Happy holidays. And thank you all.
We were not
Okay, next week, just punch my water. Just want to punch my luck.
The out of order.
What was your name?
Yeah, you can go ahead. Yeah, you can go ahead.
And what's your phone again?
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys. Thank you, Wilmer. It's a pleasure to meet you again.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe your name.
The work force, the program, like, it's like, I didn't get to ask how many the 55 states are Harlem makes. Like, if that's the, those are the, that was my 1A question that I wanted to ask. But, you know, it's on across the board, it's workforce, I mean, each of the programs.
What's Harlem?
No, this is
That's the outreach. Right, and not just strictly marketing, it's also outreach. Because it's coming to elected offices, it's getting in touch with, your Harlem-based people that are not, so of your 55, and 10 of them are Harlem, you still have another 30. I don't know, I just pulled that out of my, I have no idea how many schools are in District 5. It's coming to the community board how long has it been?
All share.
I got my lips yesterday. I mean, you can come talk to me.
Yeah. We're not gonna say, what are the issues, steps, we're not gonna do that, right? It's like, yeah. I would say, yep. Of course, Thank you so much. Pleasure to see you. Exactly.